guys, found this video on Abletontips, and today we're going to be making a piano house loop from scratch. And we're going to be using a little taster sample pack from PML. It has a bunch of loops, like tonal loops, top loops, and one-shots, all really nice stuff. And I've selected some of my favorite samples and prepared them, and we're going to be building a loop basically with these samples, along with we're going to be actually making the piano ourselves and doing some other fun stuff. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I want to make is a drone note just for us to write to, and I want to do it in A minor. So I found the saxophone sample, and it's in A minor already, but we're going to use it a little unconventionally. So what we're going to do is we're going to load it into a sampler, and then we're going to loop just a certain part of it. So if we play it, it's got this nice first note that's a little bit sustained, and the idea is to just loop that section. So let's just narrow in these markers over here, and if I play that, what I want to do is I want just the end of it to loop. So if I turned on loop, that doesn't really sound like a drone. So what I want to do is bring down the loop brace and shorten it. And I also want the loop to, instead of going to the end and then starting over again, I want it to go forwards and backwards, because that's going to make it a bit smoother. And we are going to have to switch to sampler mode for that. So if we just right click here and go simpler sampler, now we're in sampler mode. So now if I zoom in, we can use this loop brace, this top brace here, to focus in on what we want. And I'm going to start the sample a little bit later here. Actually, let's start there. So now it's looping and I want it to go forward and back. But it's still not very smooth, so we can crossfade that. And now we have one solid note. But now we need to tune it to make sure that if we play, for example, A on the keyboard, that this sample will be playing A. So what we have to do is we have to tune it to C. So I'm going to drop a tuner on here, and just so I can see what note it's playing. It's playing E. So if we need to tune it from E down to C, we need to move down 4 semitones. And how we do tuning on sampler is over here where it says root. So if we just hit the down arrow, if we click over there and hit the down arrow 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if I play A, or if I play C, sorry, on the keyboard. Sorry, I think it's up that I'm supposed to go. Okay, so the problem is now that if I hit this key C, it's playing E, and I want it to play C. So what I need to do is tell the sampler that this note is in E. So we just need to shift this up until it says E, and now you can see I'm hitting C on my keyboard, and it's playing the note C. Alright, so let's make a drone note, and I want to make that drone note 16 bars long. So let's place that note. I'm just going to make this narrow here and then place that A3. Now you can see it's playing A. I think I want this a little bit lower down. Okay, and then I want to add a bunch of reverb on it and kind of just smear it out and make it more like a drone. So I'm going to bring this up really high, bring up the decay really long, and then just bring down the low cut and the high cut a bit. And then I'm going to EQ it a bit too, just to take out some of that high end. Let's turn it down a bit. Okay, then what I want to do is just freeze it, because we're going to be playing and starting the project a lot. I don't want this reverb to ring out every single time I do that, so let's just freeze this. And the next thing we're going to do is make the piano. So for the piano, we're going to be using a grand piano. If we just search grand and then go to instruments, it'll be under simpler and then grand piano. And typically I would be using, for this like kind of piano house, the M1, the Korg M1, which is a plugin that you can search for. You can buy it if you want, but since we're sticking to only Ableton plugins for this channel, we're going to be making a similar sound in the grand piano. But first, let's write our chord progression. So the chord progression is going to be 4 bars long. So I'm just going to highlight 4 bars here and then hit Ctrl-Shift-M, make a new MIDI clip. And now I want to think about the rhythm of the melody. What I find helps is to turn on the metronome. And just before we do that, let's actually turn this BPM up to like 124. And we might need to unfreeze this because now it's going to be warped. Let's freeze it again. Okay, so the rhythm I'm hearing is din 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 din. Okay, Okay, so let's go and try and make that rhythm. So, dun, dun, and now we're doing a dotted note, dun, dun. No, dun, 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 dun. And then some eighth notes, ding, ding, ding. Okay, so that's the rhythm that I want. Sounds like this. So let's start making some chords for this rhythm. So let's make an A minor chord, A, C, E. So on this last note here, I want it to go down to the G. So let's make a G major. Okay, so we're going to be making this G major, and then we're going to basically copy this across here. So, and then these last three, we're going to move up. We're going to go up to the C major chord. And let's just hear how that sounds. Okay, I think this C is a bit bright, so we're going to bring this note down, and that's called a sus2, where we take the major third and we bring it down to the next available note. Yeah, so that's a bit darker, a bit nicer. And then we're going to go down to the F. So let's just duplicate this, and this is going to be an F major chord. And this one I also want to suspend this. And then we're going from the F, and we're staying on this F. But what we're going to do is we're going to unsuspend the chord, and that's going to give us a bit of like a tension and release. And then we need to go back up, so let's go up to this G. And I think for the G, we are just making a G major chord. Okay, so now what I want to do is kind of spread out the notes. So let's take the middle note of each chord, and we're just going to shift it up an octave. So I'm just holding shift on my keyboard and highlighting all these notes. And then we're going to hit shift it up an octave. And it's a bit bright, so let's just bring it down, everything down one octave. Shift down. And that should loop really nicely. So let's take these and just repeat them through there. And now what I want to do is kind of shape the sound and make it a bit more M1-like. So the M1, if you've ever heard it in like the more classic house piano kind of tracks, it's got a really strong and harsh attack, and it's really bright. It's like somebody's literally slamming their hands on the keyboard. And so we got to try and emulate that. So here's the soft hard macro on this grand piano. I'm going to bring that up. And I want to compress it a bit to bring out the transient. And then we can brighten it a little bit. And it might sound a bit ugly now, but what you got to remember is we're going to have quite a busy drum loop that's playing over it, so this piano is really going to cut through the mix, and so that's why we're making it so bright and strong. Okay, the next thing I want is like a string, and Ableton has some strings built in that sound pretty good for this purpose. So if you just search for string and you go to sounds, and you can have a look at the strings here, and the string that I found that works quite nicely for what I want here is this magnetic strings preset. So let's just make a new MIDI channel, and we're going to add magnetic strings. And then I'm just going to add one long note, and I want it to be on A. So let's just make this narrow here. And I think we're going to put it at A4. It's nice and high. Okay, so yeah, it's basically just like the string that builds tension. But if I solo it, has this strange, like really hissy, metallic high end up around 10k. All this stuff. And I want to take that out. And then what I want to do is just add some more space, some reverb. So I'm just going to turn up this dial. And then I'm going to use this filter cutoff to bring it in. So we're going to, through the first half, so let's just call this our A section, our B section, B. and rename that A. And I'm going to just automate this. So enable automation mode, click on the filter cutoff. We're going to bring it from like pretty much completely quiet at 27 Hertz. And we're going to open that up to around 1 kilohertz. And then as it grows, it starts to fade in. Just turn it down a bit.
Just a quick break before we go back to the tutorial. If you find these type of videos helpful, we can highly recommend the PML Academy with over 35 full-length online courses, spreading over topics like writing chords and melodies or arranging your songs to producing entire songs from start to finish. So check out the link in the description to see what's inside the All Courses bundle exactly.
Okay, so the next thing I want is a melody for the B section. And this melody is going to be 4 bars long, so it's basically going to last as long as the chord progression. So let's just make a new MIDI channel and then a new MIDI clip. And for this I'm going to be using operator. So let's just write a melody with a plain old sine wave to start. And so let's start here at the E, E4. Do, do. Do, do, do. So here we're going to go down to the G. Do, do, do. Let's go up to the B. And then here it sounds like this one should go down. Do, 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 do. Okay, so let's go down here to the G. Oh, sorry, down to the E. Do, 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 do. We're just going to repeat that. And now as for the sound of this, what I want is like something that's quite breathy and reverbed out and pushed to the back of the mix, because I still want people to be focusing on the piano, but now this melody is just going to provide like additional harmony and basically depth to the track. So I want to make it like almost sound like a flute. And how I do that usually is by combining a triangle wave with some noise. But in operator, the way it's set up is that if I put noise on this and turn it up, we're actually going to be modulating the frequency of this with this oscillator. So I don't want to do that. I want them to be rooted in parallel so that they aren't affecting each other. So we can change that by clicking on this and changing it to parallel mode over here. And now if I go here and make some noise, white noise, we should hear them coming out in parallel. Okay, so the noise is too loud. Let's just bring that down. And the problem is the noise also has an envelope on it, making it plucky. So I want to make that sustained. Okay, so that achieves pretty much what I want with that. So it's a really basic sound. We can make it a bit more interesting by processing it and adding some reverb and stuff. So first let's EQ it. And I want to saturate it so the noise is kind of affecting the sine wave a bit. So let's grab a saturator. I'm going to put that before the EQ, and I'm going to turn it up really high, like 22, and just bring this down. So yeah, now it's like kind of distorting, and it sounds a bit ugly, but at least it's interesting. And when we add reverb to it, it'll make it pretty again. So let's bring up the reverb pretty high, like again up to 90, and a long decay. And let's just play with this low and high cut to kind of take out some of those harsh resonating frequencies from the reverb. And I want to bring down the noise level a bit more. And maybe filter this out a little bit more. Okay, let's hear it in context. And then over here, maybe we can just shift this G up an octave. I think it might sound cool. Okay, so that's pretty much it for like the melodic stuff. We still need to add a bass line. The bass line is going to be really easy. We're just going to be following the bottom note of our chords. So I'm just going to copy the MIDI from the chords and place it on a new MIDI channel over here. And then it's as simple as removing all of these higher notes and just leaving the bottom notes. Now I'm going to use operator again, and this bass, purpose of this bass is to just fill out the low end. It's not to make some sort of interesting bass that people are going to be paying attention to, because the focus is the piano. So let's just hear how this sounds. So I want it to be a saw wave, and I want it down an octave, so I'll just bring down this coarse to 0.5. And then I'm going to use this filter to kind of make it plucky. So let's just go into the filter, click on filter, and I want it to come from around here so that we're getting all the sub, and then pluck open to about 1K or so. So if we just open up this envelope, we'll start to hear it. And I think what we need to do is just increase the decay because it's kind of short. Yeah, that's cool. And let's change this filter from clean to PRD. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to add some filter drive to it. So we can increase the drive. Let's add about 5 dB of drive. So open up that envelope to around 58. Let's just hear it in context with the piano. Now we can probably filter out this piano. Just make sure that there's no sub that's conflicting. Yeah, we can filter this out a bit. Okay, and then I'm just going to use this loop brace. You see it's switched on, and the brace is covering all of our MIDI notes. That means we can now drag this open, and we have our MIDI going all the way across. Can probably turn down the bass a bit. Okay, I'm going to just turn down this string a bit. And I'm also going to turn down this drone. And the operator, the melody, I'm going to turn that down a bit. Okay, I think we can now start adding our drums. So first thing I'm going to do is we're going to add our kick drum. And the kick drum we're going to be using is from that free pack. It's this one, and let's just double click and add a MIDI note there, and we want to have a kick on each quarter note. So I can bring this down from 1 to 1.2 and then just place a note at C3, drag that out, and then just drag this out, and we've got a kick on each quarter note. Let's take all of the musical stuff, put it into a group, call that one instruments, and I want to sidechain that. So I'm going to use this compressor, and we just click this to open it up, enable sidechain, take the input from the kick. That's going to let us sidechain to the signal of the kick. So if I bring down this threshold now, we start to sidechain, but the sidechain is too, let's say, triangular shaped. I want it to have a bit more of a curve in it. So what I'm going to do is bring up this frequency, and then the input of the sidechain is only going to be listening to the click of the kick, which is a really short sample. So we have a lot more control over it. So now if I bring this down, we have a much sharper point, and we can use the release to kind of bend it open. And I'm going to copy that and paste it onto the bass, because the bass I think needs a bit more sidechain. So now it's going to be getting essentially double the amount of gain reduction, because we've got sidechain from this group affecting the bass and an additional sidechain pushing it down the same amount. So it's going to be like kind of stacking that gain reduction, and we're going to get a deeper sidechain on the bass. Okay, and next up is our hi-hat. We need to add a hi-hat in there. So I'm just going to double click there, and the hat that I picked is like a typical sort of 909 sounding hi-hat. Oh, there it is. So here's the open hat, And for this, we want to be placing our nodes between 1 and 1.2, just like that, and extending them across. And then if the loop brace is enabled, we can just drag this across again, turn it down a bit. And let's turn on one-shot mode so it plays the full sample. Okay, and then we need our clap, and the clap we're using is this one. So let's double click again over here, make a new MIDI clip, and the clap's going to go on 1.2 and 1.4, but I want this to be 2 bars long, so let's just turn that up to 2 and drag this out, and then we can place a clap at each point. Let's just make the notes a bit longer, and I want to pre-shift the clap. At the moment it sounds like this. I haven't even placed the clap in there. Sounds good, but let's drag this over a tiny bit just to pre-shift it a touch. And then on the last one, I want an extra clap to land on the last quarter note, and I'm going to turn down the velocity, and that's going to create like a nice kind of fill into the next bar. Okay, now we're going to start adding some hat loops to this to kind of fill it out and add some more groove and swing to it. So the first hat loop we're going to be adding is this one. You can hear that it already has like a really nice groove in it. So I'm just going to drag it onto this channel here. So it adds a nice groove, but there's a lot of information above 10K, and I typically like to try and filter that out and just leave that space for very few instruments or hats. I just think it sounds so much cleaner to take it out. So let's just hear how it sounds if I filter it out. Yeah, I think it sounds a lot cleaner now. And I'm just going to filter out the low end from this. Okay, let's go back to our samples here. The next one I'm going to be using is this one. So let's just add another channel. And this has this kind of like shuffle, typical house shuffle in the hi-hats. And I'm going to just filter this one a little bit too. Just really leaving that 10K to my main offbeat hat. Let's take out some of that low end too. I can probably bring up this offbeat hi-hat. There we go. And now I want some difference in the drums between the A and the B section. So what I'm going to do for that is we're going to try and add this other loop which kind of like fills the purpose of a shaker loop. Because you've got like all the 16th notes in there. So I'm going to drag this and put this on this channel here, only for the B section. And we're going to process this one a little bit. As you can guess, I'm going to be taking out the high-end stuff, some of it. There's a bit of sub in there, so let's just remove that. And then I'm going to be panning this around, so we're going to use auto pan and just do this. Okay, so there's one more thing I want to add, and that's a crash cymbal. So we're going to do not really a fill here, but we're just going to have a break from the kick drum. So I'm going to take out 3 kick drums, and whenever I hear like a little pause, I'm kind of expecting like a boost in energy over there. The way we can get that energy is by using a crash, but I want to make the crash a little bit more interesting than just a plain old splash like that. So let's process this crash a bit. Let's take it and add a bunch of reverb to it to make the tail a lot longer and wider. So I'm going to bring up the dry wet pretty high and the decay really long, 18 seconds. And I'm also going to open up this high cut. And then what I want to do is add a phaser to it. And this phaser, I'm going to bring down the amount. So you can see that the phaser moves a lot less when I bring down the amount. And bring down the dry wet to allow some of that splash to come through. And now it's got this really interesting sound to it. Okay, so lastly we can just put a little bit of a limiter onto the master to make sure it doesn't clip. And let's just check the volume. Let's push up the gain so that the limiter is just reacting slightly to it. Okay, so now let's listen to our loop. 1, 2, 3, let's go. Yeah, I think that's nice and groovy. I think if you found some cool vocals for that, you could turn it into a really nice tune. Okay, thanks for watching. Make sure you grab the taster sample pack that I used to make this loop. And also you can check out some of the courses. We have some full-length start to finish courses, which will be linked below. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.